whole idea is to raise your consciousness levels. Because when you raise your consciousness levels, you stop suffering. Because you see the consequences of everything that's happening around you. People who are suffering are basically caught in lower consciousness, no matter how intelligent they are. In higher consciousness, you see it all. You see the consequences of everything you say and everything you do, and you see the consequences of everybody else, what they're saying and what they're doing. And higher consciousness sets you up for enlightenment, but it also sets you up from the perception of love, because the same obstacles that keep people's consciousness levels low are the same obstacles that are in the way of the perception of heart and enlightenment. Nobody has been programmed for freedom. We've all been programmed for imprisonment. Most people have been programmed to be victims of life, victims of circumstance, victims of other people, victims of themselves. That programming probably came from your parents and your schooling and television. Unfortunately, it keeps people locked in lower consciousness. One of the things you'll notice about anyone who has higher consciousness is they don't turn themselves into a victim of anything ever, because they're too conscious to hurt themselves. And so maybe enlightenment is out of the question for a lot of people, but a higher consciousness is definitely not. I started raising my consciousness levels when I was very young, because I realized that if you have clarity in this life, you can win. If you don't have clarity, you will fail. If you're not seeing clearly what's happening around you, you don't have clarity. If your mind is not precise, you don't have clarity. And these things are up to you, because you create the way you think. You actually create your environment inside of yourself. Up until I was 19, I used to hang out with the gangs on the streets, riding motorcycles. And the clarity there wasn't very high. It was pretty low. I had high enough clarity to be running the gang, but I was limited because I was hanging out with people who had lower clarity, lower consciousness levels. And so I changed. I did an encounter group and found another way of being in the world. I swapped my studded belt, my black clothes, my leather jacket for a three-piece suit, and decided to become a businessman. I was involved in higher consciousness in that I was hanging out with people who had more consciousness than the people I'd been hanging out with. When I walked out on the gang, I never said hello to them again. It was gone. It was over. A new life had begun, a life towards higher consciousness, towards freedom, towards heart. I didn't know all that at the time. It just felt good. And so I realized that if you want to get ahead in this life, you find teachers who are way further ahead than you, and you hang out with them. And so I did. All of my teachers were way further ahead than me. If I could run rings around them, I didn't want to know them. And so by the time I was 28, I couldn't find anyone in Australia who I couldn't run rings around. So I had to leave. And I left. And I lived in America. I lived in Italy with teachers who had higher consciousness levels. And they were quite severe teachers. They were strong, because I didn't need anyone to kiss my ass, because I already knew how great I was. I needed someone to show me where I was falling down. One of the things I noticed about people is they don't like criticism. And if you don't like criticism, give up trying to raise your consciousness levels. You're an absolute loser. Because criticism is how we get to see ourselves if we're not actually witnessing our own minds. And so the groups I was involved in, encounter groups, involved a lot of criticism. It didn't matter to me if 90% of what someone was saying to me was incorrect. I was interested in the 10%, because I was a seeker and I wanted to know how I ticked. By that stage, if I took offence to someone, I knew who the problem was. It wasn't the someone, it was me, because I was being childish. No one can make me feel but me. People can say do things that are unpleasant, but only I can make myself feel. And as a man, I'm responsible for my feelings. Blaming someone else for how I feel is childish. And immature people don't make it to high consciousness. That's not a possibility. You have to be a fully grown man and a fully grown woman to play this game. And so I found myself teaching kindergarten for the last 30 odd years to people. Kindergarten is teaching people how to take responsibility for themselves, to stop being victims of life. This is kindergarten. I'm capable of taking people into beingness. But do I meet people who are ready for that? Not likely. People want that, usually because they want to get away from something inside of themselves. And that doesn't work either. Nobody wakes up because they're trying to get away from something. People wake up because they give their lives to truth. They give their lives to heart. They basically become servants. I've been a servant for the last 35 years, I think, of everybody I meet, because I can't see any point in living any other way. Living selfishly is abhorrent to me. Selfish people hurt themselves and they hurt others. And we see the selfishness in action around the world today with all the wars. If there was no selfishness on the planet, there wouldn't be any wars. And so the best you can do for yourself is raise your consciousness levels, leave selfishness at the door, and choose the way of the heart as a way of living. And this is a beautiful thing for a human being to do for themselves and for everybody they come in contact with. And it took me 33 years of my life to realise that. 33 years of selfishness, basically being successful in the material world. When I was 28, I was retired. I'd already made millions. By the time I was 33, I'd realised I'd wasted 33 years of my life on becoming successful, rather than in pursuit of what's truly valuable here, which is love, or heart, whatever you want to call it. So now I try to help people find heart, because it's the most beautiful thing in the world. There is nothing more beautiful than heart. But there's a deal with heart, as there's a deal with enlightenment. The deal with heart is very simple. Everything for love and nothing for you. The deal with enlightenment is similar. Everything for truth and nothing for you. There is no other deal. It's a good deal. There's no such thing as selfish enlightenment. Not a possibility. Because the thing that's selfish doesn't make it to enlightenment anyway. It disappears upon enlightenment. And so I'm here to try to help you raise your consciousness levels. If you haven't seen it yet, anytime you get tripped up, anytime you contract, anytime you go into resistance over anything, you take yourself into lower consciousness. And you suffer. Pain is not suffering, resistance is suffering. People who are awake don't resist. Why would they? They're too conscious to hurt themselves. Only unconscious people hurt themselves. So we play this game. We have a 4-day retreat. For me, the retreat has already been going for 25 years. I'm in satsang all day long, every day, with people. I think it's something like 18 hours a day. And it is my love affair with humanity. But humans insist on suffering around me, insist on going into resistance. And so I can help the willing. I can't help the unwilling. When I was a seeker, after the age of 33, I would only hang out with awake teachers. I wouldn't hang out with anyone who wasn't awake. Because I knew that if you want to come home, you have to hang out with someone who knows the way home, not someone who's pretending to know the way home. And there's a great deal of pretenders out there, pretending they're awake when they're not. If someone doesn't have a Buddha field around them 24 hours a day, they're not awake. It's simple. If they do have a Buddha field around them 24 hours a day, they are awake, no matter what kind of asshole they might be. They're awake. So I sought the awakened ones. And in hanging out with them, I found that some of them weren't awake, but they could throw a Buddha field temporarily because they could sit and find beingness through self-inquiry. So I hung out with them as well, because there was a real shortage of awake people in the world, and particularly in West Australia where I lived. I had to wait for the visiting teachers. And so any kind of Buddha field I could get into, I'd surrender into. People think it's about collecting knowledge. No amount of knowledge ever set anyone free. No amount of knowledge ever healed a wound of the heart. You want to be free, you learn unconditional surrender. The hardest thing for a human being to learn because it's against survival. The only way that I know that it can be learnt is through the practice of acceptance and let go. Very simple, but very difficult. So any time that something upsets you, disturbs you, takes you into resistance, that's your teacher. That's the one that's showing you where you haven't showed up with consciousness yet, where you're still resisting life, where you have belief systems that are in the way of you getting free. I made a deal with heart because I chose to serve heart because I gave up on enlightenment when my master Osho died. And I chose to serve heart, and the deal was very simple. No contracting, no resisting, because that would be a betrayal of heart, because it would cut me off from the perception of it. And so I failed thousands of times. People think this game's easy. It's not easy. But in getting up and attempting again and taking down any belief system that was supporting that contraction or that resistance, I started to find more and more space, more and more freedom. Like everybody else on this planet, I was never really trained to be free. I had to train myself. You can find teachers, they can show you the way, but they can't do it for you. You have to do it yourself. So anytime I contracted over anything, I'd be examining the contraction. I wouldn't be pointing a finger at someone and saying, hey, it's your fault. That's childish. And that's in the way of freedom. So at some point, you've got to ask yourself, what am I into? My whole deal was freedom. Ever since I was a little boy, I've been into freedom. I realised that I was imprisoned. And I wanted to get free. And so the endeavour was to get free. So now I teach people how to get free. But you've got to listen like your life depends upon it, because it does. Everything I say to you has to go through a whole pile of filters in your mind, belief systems in your mind, that will try to alter what I'm saying to fit your beliefs. Your mind is your greatest enemy when it comes to freedom, because it wants to be right. It wants to be correct. It wants to know. And it will lie to you to prove itself right. It's just the way it is. So you have to listen like your life depends upon it. And that way you may be able to cut through the filters that are blocking you from hearing. And you may say, I'm listening, I'm hearing. Bullshit, you'd be awake. And one of the things about awake people that I noticed is you can't control them in any way, shape or form, because they're free. They don't give a rat's ass about anything, really. They can't be manipulated. It's beautiful. It's very hard for ego-based people to imagine what it's like to be awake. You're concerned about later. You're concerned about survival. I'm okay with death right now. I don't want a future. I have it now. It's different. A lot of your thoughts are around what's going to happen later, or maybe what's happened before. I have no interest in the past or the future. Not mine, not yours. I'm free. And if you want to get free, come and hang out with me. You won't even know it, but I'll be taking you apart from the moment I see you. Because this game is an undoing process. It's not a doing up process. It's not a bigger, better, and more powerful game. It's an undoing game until there's nothing in the way of your freedom. And if you expect me to be fair, get real. I'm here to help you undo. I'm not fair. I'm real. And when you bullshit me, I'll tell you.